Have you ever noticed that your desire, your intense visceral sexual energy seems to exceed mere lust, sensory pleasure, or even romantic attachment? Beneath its surface, there may be a latent reservoir of meaning, a subtle yet potent capacity you were never taught to cultivate. Many people push this energy down or distract themselves until it dissipates. Others expend it impulsively and without direction. A small minority, however, discover how to transmute it, not through repression or hedonistic excess, but through careful attention and disciplined understanding. By attuning to it, interpreting what it signals, and learning to contain it skillfully, this energy can become a refined fuel that catalyzes inner awakening and deepens one's experience of life. Have you ever felt your sexual energy as a source of insight rather than impulse? Comment 1 if you've tried sitting with that energy to learn from it. Comment 2 if it still feels confusing or purely physical so far. If you feel these psychology sharings are helpful and relatable, you're welcome to become a channel member and stay with us on a deeper journey. As a member, you'll get early and extended access to more in-depth practical content that you can apply in everyday life. Carl Jung regarded sexual energy as far more than a biological impulse. He understood it as a symbolic archetypal force, intimately connected with the unconscious and with the possibility of inner alchemy or profound psychological transformation. From this perspective, sexuality is not confined to bodily drives. It participates in processes of integration, whereby split-off aspects of the psyche are reconciled. Above all, Jung linked this energy to individuation, the gradual becoming of one's true unified self, through the assimilation of previously unconscious contents into conscious life. To begin at the foundation, whenever you sense that magnetic attraction toward another person, the bodily ache, the impulse to connect and merge, there is more at play than physiology. Such activation carries a communicative function. It is a message issued by the psyche itself. While the ego interprets the intensity as centered on the other person, the unconscious reads it as a summons from within, pointing to a nascent aspect of the self-seeking expression development or conscious recognition. This is also why, in dream work, explicitly sexual images seldom correspond to literal sexual activity. More often, they symbolize conjunction, the unification of opposites, and the healing of internal divisions, masculine with feminine light, with shadow consciousness, with the unconscious. In that sense, erotic impulses frequently encode a deeper telos, a symbolic yearning to restore inner wholeness and dissolve polarization within the psyche. In contemporary culture, however, we often fixate on the superficial manifestations of this energy. Stimulation is mistaken for depth, and sheer intensity is misread as genuine intimacy. We pursue transient sensation while neglecting significance, and the cumulative effect of such consumption is paradoxical. The more we seek immediate gratification, the more pervasive an inner emptiness becomes, signaling a loss of orientation and purpose. That hollow feeling functions as a diagnostic sign, the psyche's appeal for depth, substance, and meaningful direction. Here, Jung's contribution is pivotal, offering a conceptual map and practical orientation for moving beneath surface excitation. Rather than dispersing vitality outward, he invites a deliberate reorientation, turning the current inward, so that it can support integration, insight, and sustained growth. This inward redirection must not be confused with repression or moralistic denial. It does not rely on shame, guilt, or ascetic negation. Rather, it concerns the cultivation of genuine agency, self-mastery, that neither dominates others nor collapses under compulsion. It is the capacity to contain desire without being overrun by it, to remain present within the heat of longing long enough for it to be metabolized, thereby supporting psychological wholeness and maturity. Consider a different metric for vitality. When did you last feel profoundly alive? Not due to external consumption, but because you successfully contained and refined an inner charge. Many of us never acquire the skill of containment. We oscillate between suppression and impulsive discharge. By contrast, the inner alchemist practices holding energy, allowing it to accumulate and transform. In symbolic terms, this is the commencement of transmutation, the conversion of raw affect into psychological gold, a metaphor for integrated, resilient presence. Within Jungian thought, the aim is not the eradication of libido, but its sublimation, elevating and refining the drive so that untamed erotic energy eros can be channeled toward meaningful forms. Creative work repair of the psyche and relationships and experiences that open onto spiritual awareness. The emphasis is on transformation through rechanneling, not on denial or forced restraint. Achieving such transmutation requires confronting projection. We habitually cast our inner contrasexual image anima, or animus, onto others, which lends them an aura of enchantment. Desire then appears faded because we perceive in the other a reflected fragment of our own psyche. Until we recognize and withdraw these projections, acknowledging that the sought-after qualities originate within, we remain bound to illusion and fail to contact the underlying essence of our longing. The practical work therefore starts with a reframed question. Rather than strategizing about how to secure another's desire, we inquire into what this inner activation is attempting to teach. The method involves observing bodily responses with curiosity instead of condemnation and turning toward desire rather than evading it. By permitting the energy to circulate without immediate discharge, we can read it as a communication from the unconscious, instead of a mere directive to gratify an urge. The desire itself is not pathological. It is neither inherently wrong nor an adversary to be defeated. Properly regarded, it is vital and even sacred in its function. If we allow it, this force becomes an orienting guide that leads us back to neglected regions of the self parts that yearn for intimacy, not only with another person, but with one's own depths, thereby restoring inner connection and care. Jung described this as an inner marriage, a conjunctio of opposites within the psyche. Each act of containment, each moment in which we refrain from reflexively externalizing energy, adds fuel to that integrative fire. In doing so, we create conditions for the psyche to reassemble itself, a return of dispersed vitality that feels like calling the soul back into its own dwelling. This orientation does not mandate celibacy, emotional detachment, or coldness. Rather, it invites consciousness intention and steady presence. It asks us to relinquish compulsive patterns, to stop spending energy in pursuit of fantasies that cannot satisfy, and to reclaim authority over our lives. Crucially, this is accomplished not by repudiating desire, but by honoring it with depth discernment and appropriate boundaries. This helps explain why many consequential figures, artists, reformers, poets, appear to maintain an intimate, disciplined relationship with their erotic vitality. For them, eros is not a commodity to be exploited, but a current to be refined and transformed into cultural creation, ethical courage, and enduring expression. Such individuals did not live from depletion. They were marked by fullness precisely because they turned inward. By consenting to let longing become a path, an inner itinerary toward truth, and toward the deeper self, they converted desire into orientation, using it as a compass for authenticity and sustained meaning. This is an invitation in the present moment. Instead of running from desire, Turn toward it with attentive listening and ask directly what it is asking of you. Reframe it not as a problem to be solved, but as a threshold to be crossed, a doorway into deeper awareness. For beneath the appearance of every sexual urge, there lies a spiritual summons, a call that points beyond impulse toward meaning and orientation. A pivotal insight about sexual energy is that it is not content to remain confined to the body's lower centers. By its nature, it tends toward ascent. It seeks to rise through the whole system, activating broader awareness and more refined states of consciousness. Crucially, this upward movement cannot be coerced. It unfolds through cultivated awareness, through sensitive attention that invites rather than compels. Many of us inhabit our lives with a subtle disconnection from the body, experiencing arousal as an external event that happens to us, rather than as a process we can meet with consciousness. When we slow down and witness our interior experience resisting the reflex to fix discharge or anesthetize it, we discover that this energy carries its own form of intelligence. It orients itself naturally. What it most requires is spaciousness and patient containment. Here, the disciplined practice of presence becomes indispensable. Jung held that consciousness widens when we sustain the tension between opposites, not by prematurely choosing one pole, but by remaining with the paradox. Sexual energy exemplifies this paradoxical field. It encompasses creation and dissolution, desire and apprehension, communion and distinction all at once, and invites us to hold these polarities without fragmentation. Can you stay with the tension of desire without immediately acting or shutting down? Comment 1. If you practice holding that paradox in your body and breath. Comment 2. If you usually move to relieve the tension right away. If you can remain within that charged tension, neither acting out nor reflexively repressing you, unlock a psychological doorway. In the stillness that follows, something different becomes audible, not the plans of the ego, but the quiet prompting of the soul. The soul does not shout or insist. It becomes perceptible when we grow sufficiently quiet to listen. Fully received and not immediately expended sexual energy fosters this very quietude, drawing attention inward and inviting encounter with the self beyond roles, expectations, and fantasy. Yet the path is not uniformly pleasant. It can be painful precisely because sexual energy stirs what has been sealed away, old injuries, unmet needs, and memories burdened by shame. It arouses more than pleasure. It also evokes the shadow, the disowned material that must be acknowledged if integration is to occur. At this juncture, many people halt, overwhelmed by intensity, and concluding that something has gone awry. In fact, they are poised at the threshold of more profound healing. The difficulty is a sign that deeper layers are approaching the surface, asking to be witnessed and worked through. Hence, shadow work is essential rather than optional. Genuine transformation cannot be achieved by escapist meditation or visualization alone. It requires direct engagement with the disavowed parts, anger, manipulation, jealousy, neediness, because these facets are gripping the energy. They function as inner saboteurs that obstruct the current from ascending and must be met, understood, and integrated. Jung often said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Therefore, if engaging your sexual energy stirs darkness, this is an auspicious sign. It indicates proximity to the core material and signals that the substantive work of integration is underway. When you discontinue the flight from these aspects and take up the task of integrating them, you build a more resilient container, capable of holding greater energy potency and vitality. This marks a decisive turning point. Sexual energy is no longer used as an escape mechanism, but becomes a mirror that reveals the authentic contours of the self. Such a shift exerts broad influence, reshaping relationships, expanding creative capacity, and clarifying purpose. Aliveness increases not through heightened pursuit of stimulation, but through anchoring in essence, a grounded connection to what is most vital and true within. Your presence grows quietly magnetic, not via performance or display, but through authentic embodiment. Others register this change often without being able to name it, a sense of depth, a steady inner flame, and a fullness that resists imitation. Such qualities communicate themselves directly and require no spectacle. This ultimately is the core of genuine charisma. It does not arise from tricks, formulas, or seduction strategies. It emerges from a living relationship with one's own energy, real, grounded, and self-governed, through which integrity, calm, power, and presence naturally radiate. From here, desire itself matures. You're no longer drawn to people by unconscious projections. You're attracted to what reflects your soul, to bonds that honor your growth, ask you to expand rather than contract, and move you toward truth instead of fantasy. In this space, sexual energy becomes spiritual discernment. It shifts from a mere appetite for pleasure into a compass, an inner radar for what's genuine. At a felt nervous system level, you sense who aligns with your path and who diverts you. Attraction doesn't disappear. If anything, your capacity for pleasure, connection, and depth grows. But you are no longer captive to it. You have choice, and that freedom is everything. Let's bring this shift into daily life. It isn't theory, but a practice. Begin with awareness. When arousal arises, don't react right away. Don't act distract or flee into fantasy or your phone. Stay with it. Sit with the feeling. Notice it in your body. Breathe into it and ask, what does this energy want to become if I don't try to control it? Initially, it may feel intense or overwhelming, yet with time it changes. It softens, then lifts. It moves through the heart, the throat, the mind. It offers images, memories, insights. It becomes a teacher. This is often where creativity breaks open, where clarity appears, because you stop spending your strongest energy on distractions and begin to regard it as sacred fuel. You can also direct this energy through simple rituals. Rather than discharging it through old patterns, make a space to honor it. Light a candle, journal, paint, dance, or pray not to repress desire, but to give it shape, and let it move through your body, breath, and hands. This follows the way of ancient mystics and what tantric yogis understood. Erotic energy is not merely about pleasure. It is about presence, about interlacing the sacred with the physical. Carl Jung was drawn to alchemy because it reflects the psyche's path of transformation. In alchemy, base material endures heat, pressure, and dissolution before it becomes gold. Your sexual energy is that raw substance. Your consciousness is the flame. If you tend the fire and remain with the process, the gold reveals itself within, not as something external, but as wisdom, clarity, and wholeness. Therefore, this path is neither abstinence nor indulgence. It is integration. It is learning to partner with your energy as a sacred ally and becoming someone who doesn't merely seek love, but embodies it, who doesn't only pursue purpose, but lives it. And it starts with one thing: your willingness to feel. A frequently missed dimension of sexual energy is how deeply it molds our way of loving, not only whom we're attracted to, but how we relate, how we give and receive, and perhaps most crucially, what we are actually seeking in another. Jung observed that romantic pull is seldom about the other person. It centers on what they rouse within us, what we have forgotten, lost, or buried. We don't fall in love with people so much as with the part of our own soul they recall. That is where projection begins. Early in an intense bond, we meet reflections of inner archetypes. For a man, it may be Thema, the idealized feminine. For a woman, the animus, the inner masculine. These figures are impersonal and ancient, arising from the collective unconscious, with a power that feels sacred, fated, and immense. Love feels vast, because it activates the archetypal and links us to a mystery beyond time. The core truth, as Jung emphasized, is that if we don't recognize projection, we are not relating to the other at all. We're engaging our own unconscious. Thus, sexual energy can enlighten or harm. Unconscious, it feeds fantasy obsession and codependency. We pursue an image instead of perceiving a person, mistake chemistry for compatibility, and read intensity as destiny when it may actually be an invitation to do inner work. Loving from integration means the erotic charge remains, but is grounded. You are not hunting for someone to complete you. You seek a partner who reflects your wholeness, challenges you, grows with you, and above all, helps you see more clearly who you already are. This love cannot be hurried. It doesn't flare and vanish. It ripens gradually and asks for presence, vulnerability, and the courage to be seen in both light and shadow. Here, sexual energy surpasses pleasure and becomes revelation within the safety of a conscious bond. Intimacy acts as a mirror, revealing where you are free and where you remain bound, where you open in trust and where you contract in fear. Each touch, gaze, and moment of presence invites more of you into the light. When intimacy mirrors your patterns back to you, do you lean in or pull away? Comment 1 if you've used relationship moments to do inner work. Comment 2 if those mirrors still feel too raw to face. When you step into that field with your soul as well as your body, you encounter what Jung might name the sacred marriage, the union of masculine and feminine, not only between partners, but within each person. The body becomes a temple, love-making a ritual, and desire devotion. This is not technique or performance, nor pop culture better lover metrics. It is full presence and wakefulness, meeting another soul with nothing concealed, nothing forced, nothing withheld. Meeting another at that depth transforms you. It fractures old patterns, melts masks, and awakens a part of you that no longer chases because it has already arrived. Yet this depth endures only if your relationship with your own energy is conscious. If you still require another's validation, repair, or filling of emptiness, the wounded inner child will seize your sexual energy. That path won't transform. It will repeat, and repetition opposes evolution. Hence, Jung's path is no quick remedy, nor is it sexy in the marketed sense of spirituality. It is demanding and raw. It asks you to face your deepest wounds. Abandonment fears the fear of not being enough, and especially the fear of being fully seen. When you are truly seen, defenses crumble, the ego flares, projections fall away, and what remains is you naked, not in body, but in essence. That bareness is the most fertile ground for change. In that raw field, a new self can arise, not the one that performs or conceals, but the one that simply is. From this point, even arousal alters. It loosens from fantasy validation and control and binds to presence. You find yourself aroused by honesty, truth, emotional clarity, and the sanctity of showing up real. Sex then becomes less about climax and more about communion. You start to register subtler energies. The heart opens, the breath settles, awareness widens. The body serves not only pleasure, but awakening. The borders between you and others soften. revealing that this is not possession, but union. A union that does not erase you, but renders you more yourself. Here lies the paradox: the more consciously you merge with another, the more individually whole you become. True intimacy does not dissolve identity, it refines it. Yet such wholeness cannot be sustained without returning to the internal marriage, the sacred conjunctio, that Jung described not as a moment, but a movement, a lifelong unfolding. You begin to see that every outer union is a mirror of this inner union. Every relational struggle, rupture, or revelation reflects the degree to which your own inner opposites, masculine and feminine spirit, and body desire and discipline, have been integrated or remain split. This is why, even in the presence of love, confusion can linger. Even in sexual closeness, you may feel distance, because the unresolved within you is still asking to be met. Jung emphasized that individuation is not about perfect harmony, but about conscious relationship, the willingness to stay present with contradiction, to stand in the tension of polarities, without collapsing into reaction. And so the work continues, not just with others, but within you. Desire keeps surfacing, not to torment, but to teach. Not to trap, but to transform. Each wave of longing becomes another opportunity to re-enter the alchemical vessel, to feel fully without fleeing, to refine the base substance of eros into something durable, radiant, and real. This is no longer about self-help or self-improvement. It is about soul. And the soul doesn't crave outcomes. It craves presence. What deepens now is not strategy or control, but your ability to say yes to the mystery of your own becoming. That is the real initiation. When you know that every spark of attraction, every erotic stirring, every ache for connection contains within it the call to remember yourself, and you heed that call. You step into the sacred responsibility of carrying your energy with reverence. And all of it begins with one choice: stop using sexual energy to anesthetize pain and start using it to light your way. From here, you stop chasing experiences and start seeking essence. You're no longer afraid of solitude because you've met yourself. And you quit pursuing highs because you've tapped the living current that runs through your body, psyche, and soul. That river is ever present. It seeks no approval or external permission, only your attention. When you offer that attention as a way of life, not a brief discipline, you begin living from your source, and life starts mirroring that change. A quiet, unmistakable moment arrives when you know you're not who you were. Something has shifted, not from acquiring anything external, but from reclaiming what was within. The energy that once confused you becomes your compass. The desire that bred chaos becomes your creative channel. The longing that felt like a curse opens into a love so vast it relies on no one. It flows from you. You move differently and speak differently, not with arrogance, but with alignment. You stop seeking permission to feel alive. You simply are. Others sense it even if they can't name it. You become magnetic, not by trying to attract, but by being whole. If you'd love to keep receiving more meaningful videos about psychology, healing, and understanding yourself better, consider supporting the channel by becoming a member. Your registration not only unlocks more valuable content for you, but also gives me the motivation to keep creating and sharing regularly. This is the quiet revolution Jung indicated, not outward, but inward, a revolution of consciousness, presence, and power. If you've come this far through each layer, image, and truth, you already know this isn't merely a concept. It's a choice, and a path that begins and ends with your willingness to feel deeply and live honestly. So I ask, as a fellow traveler, What will you do with this energy? Will you keep searching outward or start the real adventure within? If this message moved you even slightly, then it's not just a video, it's a mirror, and you are ready to stop leaking energy through fear and fantasy, and to create a life that reflects your soul's depth. Share this with someone who needs to remember their power. Leave a comment if something awakened. Let's cultivate a space where more people return to themselves and recall that sexuality is not a detour from the spiritual path. When held with reverence and awareness, it is the path. Every like, share, and message carries this wisdom farther, helping more people step into themselves and helping this community grow, not only in size, but in depth. This is not merely a movement of minds. It is a movement of hearts. So if you're ready, walk with me. Let's rouse what's been asleep and turn energy into evolution together. Are you ready to treat your erotic energy as sacred fuel for your life? Comment 1 if you're committing to one daily practice this week. Comment 2 if you're curious but want guidance on where to start.